Hi, everybody. Welcome to Your Move. I'm Andy Stanley, and today we're talking about pride, that ugly thing in me, that ugly thing in you that shuts you in and shuts others out. Stick around. We're beginning a brand new three-part series today called Killing It. And just to let you know up front what this is about, this is a series about that one thing inside of you and that one thing inside of me that keeps me from and causes me to, that keeps you from and causes you to. So what I'm going to do to get us started is I'm going to give you some clues as to what that thing is. I'm going to read you a list of keeps you froms and causes you to and see if you can guess. This is the one thing that keeps you from celebrating other people's success. It's the one thing that keeps you from initiating an apology when you know that you're wrong. It's the one thing that keeps you from initiating an apology when you were only 5% wrong and the other person was 95% wrong. It's the thing that keeps you arguing your point after the fact that you realize that you don't even really have a very good point, but you keep arguing. It keeps you from admitting you've lost, keeps you from admitting weakness, keeps you from admitting you need help, keeps you from admitting you don't know what you're doing, even though everybody else knows that you don't know what you're doing. It's what causes you to power up when you should be opening up. It's what causes you to cheat before you allow yourself to lose. It's what causes you to lie about your past, a failed marriage, the fact that you never really graduated, causes you to have the final word, and it causes you to buy things to impress people who aren't even paying any attention to you. Anybody got a guess? Yes, it's pride. We're going to talk for 3 weeks about pride. Isn't that exciting? Now, this isn't the pride where I'm proud of my kids and you're proud of your niece and your nephew and you're proud of your company and you're proud of your artwork and you're proud of your photography and you're proud of your company. This isn't the pride that inspires people to greatness. This is that yucky thing inside of you and inside of me that C.S. Lewis was talking about when he made this extraordinary statement. Here's what he said. He said, unchastity, which we don't even use that word anymore. And if you don't know what it means, don't look it up. It'll disappoint you. Unchastity, anger, greed, drunkenness, I love this, are mere flea bites in comparison to pride, because pride leads to every other vice. And it's in you, and it's in me, and you've been the victim of it in your family or your current family or a relationship or at work or somewhere, and you've dispensed it. The problem with pride is you can see it in other people in a second. You can see expressions of pride in a second. It is almost impossible to see in the mirror. It is almost impossible to see in the mirror, which means there may be people in your lives that are victims of your pride, and because you associate pride with overt arrogance and you're not overtly arrogant, you think I don't have a pride problem, but pride is insidious, it's ugly, and it rests in all of us. So for the next 3 weeks, we're going to learn how to kill it. Now, a few words about pride, and none of this is new information. This is just my way of telling you something you already know, but to kind of get us all on the same page. So if you sit through the first half of the message, you go, I already knew that, good. We're just getting everybody on the same page. So let's talk about something we already know. First of all, pride diminishes you. And this is a surprise to some extent because we think pride makes us bigger and greater and grander and puffs us up. In fact, that's the terminology we use, that, pride puffs us up. Pride makes you smaller and worse. It actually diminishes you. Specifically, pride always diminishes your capacity. Your capacity to admit what you need to admit, your capacity to acknowledge what you need to acknowledge, and your capacity to apologize when you need to apologize. And we've all had that strange kind of emotional thing, where we know we need to say something, and, she's over there, working in the kitchen, you're sitting at the counter going, I know I should apologize, okay? And you should, and there's a battle going on the inside, or you're listening to somebody kind of come back at you about something you made a point about, and you know that they've actually trumped your point and they're right, and there's something in you, and you just need to admit it, you need to apologize, you need to acknowledge, but there's like this, it's so emotional, isn't it? It's like there are layers and layers and layers of emotion, and it's difficult to make ourselves say what we know we need to say, and in that way, pride just diminishes us. It makes us smaller. That's why we got to kill it. Now, not only does it diminish us that way, pride diminishes our capacity to say what needs to be said. For some of you, there are people who love you and they are dying for one positive word, one positive affirmation, one compliment, just to walk over there and say, honey, that was unbelievable, or sweetheart, or, son or daughter or niece or nephew or somebody at work, to just walk up and compliment them. And you know you need to. And there's just something in you. It's like it's sitting on your heart and you just can't make yourself say what needs to be said. You can't, not only that, you can't hear what needs to be heard. There are people who just are trying to get through to you, and your pride, they just can't get through. The words just bounce off. They even say that. And in some cases, there's something that needs to be given. You just can't give what needs to be given. And when I say you can't, you really can't. Pride is that powerful. It actually diminishes our ability to do what we know we need to do. That's why it makes us smaller, not bigger. Pride diminishes our capacity to love. And it diminishes our capacity to receive love as well. So it almost goes without saying that pride essentially crowds other people out. When you are full of you, think about this. When you are full of you, there's no room for anyone else. When you are full of you, there is no room for anyone else. And the thing is that's so insidious, you don't even know it when it's happening. There are people around you that feel pressed up against the wall at work, pressed up against the wall at home, walking on eggshells around you because the least little thing is going to create some sort of conflict, or you're just going to go silent, or you're going to be passive aggressive, or you're just going to be aggressive. And people are scared to death. There's no room for anyone else in the room but you, and you don't even know it. Pride deprioritizes everyone else in the room. But along with crowding people out, people aren't the only thing that gets crowded out by pride. Because pride, your pride and my pride, has the potential to crowd God out as well. David in Psalm, and in the Psalms, he wrote most of the Psalms in Psalm 10 actually, Psalm chapter 10, David writes the following words about pride. Here's what he says. He says, in his pride, the wicked man does not seek him. And it's because prideful people seek what's best for themselves. Prideful people just seek what's best for me. He says, in his pride, the wicked man does not seek him. In all of his thoughts, there is no room for God. That pride has the potential to crowd God out. In fact, literally in the Hebrew, this verse actually means there is no God. In his thoughts, there is no God. That at the end of the pride spectrum, there is the assumption, you know what? I really am the center of my universe. And there's no point in moving out of the center of my universe because there is no God to fill the vacuum. I might as well be the center. Now, this idea introduces a really big idea that I don't want to spend a lot of time on. In fact, we should come back, maybe spend a couple of weeks on it. But I just want to drop this in and then we're going to move on. Because pride has the potential to crowd God out, somebody in the room, somebody at one of our churches, somebody that's watching, this is for you. Your pride and not your intellect is keeping you from God. It's your pride and not your intellect that is keeping you from God. You have stiff-armed God and the idea and the concept of God with your intellect. But the truth is, for somebody out there, your real issue is not how smart you are. Your real issue is how prideful you are. And I just want to give you one tip. And I know I've gone to meddling, and I know that you're never, ever going to come back after I say this, but you just need to know this. Somebody needs to tell you. Here's a tip as to whether or not the issue really isn't your intellect, it's your pride. And when I say intellect, I mean, you've got 3 or 4 reasons that you just kind of shut down every religious, conversation. You're smarter than the rest of us. I get that, okay? So you've got your 2 or 3 arguments, and I'll give you credit. If you and I were having coffee and you gave me your 3 or 4 arguments against religion and against the existence of God, I would just go ahead and maybe tell you up front, you would possibly win the argument. So these are things that you really believe, and I'm not discounting your intellect. But if in addition to stiff-arming God with your intellect, you also have a tendency to stiff-arm the people you love the most with your intellect, you have a pride problem, not an intellect problem. Now, I know you hate me, but somebody had to tell you that. So you just think about that for a few minutes. Okay, let's move on. So bottom line, pride, and we all know this, pride is a prison. It's a prison. And it shuts us in, and it shuts God and others out. And no one would opt for this on purpose. Not one single person in the world would say, you know what, I would like to develop such a strong case of pride that no one feels close to me and I don't feel close to anyone else. No one would do that. No one would say, I want to have such a strong dose of pride. My kids and my nieces and nephews and perhaps my grandkids someday are always going to wonder whether or not I love them. That's my goal, for everyone to always wonder whether or not I love them. And then when they all gather at my funeral, they'll all say, did you know? I didn't know. Did anybody have a clue? Did anyone feel loved by this guy, by this woman? No, that's my goal. That's not your goal. So consequently, we're going to talk about it for 3 weeks. So now here's the great thing, okay? And this is kind of brings us to the part maybe you haven't thought about. An invitation to follow Jesus, an invitation or the invitation to follow Jesus is actually an invitation to unfollow pride. Now, I want to explain this in just a second. The invitation to follow Jesus is actually the invitation, or an invitation is the equivalent of an invitation to unfollow pride. And let me talk about this for just a second. We believe that you can follow Jesus or begin following Jesus without believing what most Christians believe about Jesus. Now, I believe Jesus was the Son of God. Did you know that you can begin following Jesus without believing that? And the reason that we say that is because all of Jesus' first century followers began following Jesus before they arrived at the conclusion that he was the Son of God. And some of those who followed him for years concluded he was not the Son of God. You can choose to follow and begin to lean into the teachings of Jesus without assuming the same things that many of us assume about Jesus. And the reason that's important is because Jesus taught, and I don't want you to miss this, Jesus taught and modeled a radically liberating version of humility. That Jesus taught and modeled a radically liberating version of humility, and it is appropriate for you and it is applicable to you regardless of who you think Jesus is. Because when Jesus showed up, he showed up in a world that was all about a religious and political pecking order, where the great people, did great things, and if you were sick, it's because God was mad at you, and if bad things happened, it's because your karma wasn't working to your advantage and you had been somebody bad in a previous life. I mean, everybody believed all that stuff like many people believe today. Jesus shows up into that world, and he says this. He says, let me just redefine greatness for you to begin with. Greatness is defined by how well you serve other people, not how well you are served. What? Now, you've heard this before. This isn't new. Yeah, greatness is defined by how well and how passionate you are about doing for others, not getting others to do for you. And suddenly, he turns the whole thing upside down. Jesus came along and he said, you know what? Meek is the new black. That's what Jesus taught. Meek is the new black. He said this. He said, the meek, now I don't even know what this means, but I think it's awesome. The meek shall inherit the earth. Do you know what that means? I have no idea. The meek shall inherit the earth, but it means there is an inheritance beyond this life. And Jesus says, look, there's not a person in America, there's certainly not a middle class or upper middle class person in America who has a 3x5 card or a sticky note on their mirror that says, remember to be meek. Who wants to be meek? And Jesus said, look right here, I'm telling you, the meek have got it going on. The meek shall inherit the earth. You know what else he did? And we've heard this story 1,000 times if you grew up in church, and culturally, we just completely miss the emotion and the smell and the significance of this scene toward the end of Jesus' ministry. When he washes, now he's the rabbi, okay? With these hands, he has healed people. He's raised the dead. I mean, he's touched lepers and didn't get leprosy. In fact, instead of him getting leprosy, they got whatever he got, and they got healed. I mean, it was amazing. And Jesus washed his followers' feet. He washed their feet. He is the greatest among them, and he washes their feet. He says, take that, pride. And he says to his followers, now that you've seen me do it, you've heard me talk about it, now that you've seen me do it, I want you to go and do likewise. And if you do, it will break the power of pride in your life. But the best thing he did, the most significant thing he did, the pinnacle, the epicenter, the aha moment, the are you kidding me, event, was that Jesus initiated reconciliation. Jesus initiated. So when you don't initiate reconciliation, it's like, they were wrong and you were wrong, and you're going to wait for them to call you. You're going to wait for them to apologize. You're going to wait for them to come in your direction. And even if you're just a little bit wrong and they're a whole lot wrong, and even if you're a whole lot wrong and there's just something in us that's like, Do I want to say something? Do I want to apologize? Do I want to initiate? You know, I need them to come in my office and sit down and start the conversation. There's just that whole conflict. Jesus, the Son of God, we believe. Jesus, an extraordinary teacher, you believe. Whoever you believe Jesus is. Jesus initiated reconciliation. Here's why that's significant. He was right and he was wronged and he initiated reconciliation. If you just follow Jesus in that one way, in that one area, it has the power to break through the pride that keeps you locked in and keeps the people you love the most locked out. Pride says, wait. Jesus says, initiate. That's cute. So we're going to say it out loud together. Ready? All together. Ready? Pride says, wait. Jesus says, one more time. Pride says, wait. Jesus says, pride says, I don't have to think about this. I got to get ready and get my friends praying for me. That's what Christians do. I need you to pray for me. Half the time you just go, look, I'm not praying for you. Just go do it, okay? I'm not going to pray about it. Just call her right now. Here's the phone. Use my phone. Call. Did you pray? I really need to. No, we're not going to pray. So Jesus says, look, I am guiltless. I'm guiltless. And just humanly speaking, you know, if Jesus and God are in heaven, I don't know how this worked, not the way I'm about to describe it. Jesus and God are in heaven. Jesus is like, Dad, really? You want me to go down there? It's like, yeah. Go down there. Do what? I want you. Well, you know, tell them about me, then die for them. What? Most of them aren't even going to get what I'm doing. They're not even going to accept me. They're just going to, you know, trash them. I mean, they're just going to take advantage of it. I know. I want you to do that anyway. Well, who would do that? We will. We're going to initiate. We're going to initiate. They're not going to reciprocate necessarily, but we're going to initiate. I'm telling you. That is extraordinary, mind-bending, relationship-mending humility. And Jesus said, that's what I want you Jesus followers to do. Now, the Apostle Paul, 20-something years, you know, after the fact, is looking back. Now, Paul, you got to know this if you're a Bible reader. Paul was friends of John. John knew Jesus, you know. Paul's a friend of Peter. Peter knew Jesus, experienced the whole ministry of Jesus. Paul knew these folks. So 20 or something years, he's looking back and he's kind of got the perspective of time, plus all these relationships. And here's what he writes to Christians living in Philippi, brand new Christians, Greek and Roman-oriented Christians. He says this, in your relationships, this is so convicting. But what if we just did this? In your relationships with one another, like the people you live with, work with. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. Uh-oh. In other words, have the same approach to life. Take the same approach. Take the same tack. You know, get yourself all lined up. Have the same mindset as Christ. And then a couple of verses later, he dives in deep and he says this. Who, talking about Jesus, made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant. There it is. How can I serve you? How can I serve you? Okay, she's really, really, really mad. He's really, really, really mad. They've really, really offended me. How can I serve them? What? Do what? Yeah, how can I serve them? Wait. Serve them? They owe you an apology, I know. But see, I'm going to follow Jesus. See, if I go with me, I'm going to allow my pride to keep me in and keep them out. But I don't do that anymore. That does not work. It never leads anywhere good. So how can I serve them? Okay, but they're your enemies. I know, Jesus talked about that too. He even said, love your enemies. Oh, how can I serve them as Jesus served me? You say, that's radical. I know, that's my point. It is a radical approach to humility that kills pride. He says he made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. In other words, he chose to get what he did not deserve. He chose not to get what he was entitled to. He said, I deserve it. I'm not going to take it. I'm entitled to it. I'm not going to opt for it. And being found in appearance as a man, he, there's our word, humbled himself. Jesus, see, because I believe Jesus is the Son of God, this is just so emotional to me, as it should be to any Christian. Even if you're not sure about this, this should be so emotional that anyone would do this. He humbled himself. He made the decision to place himself under those who did not deserve for him to place himself under them. I'm telling you, that is extraordinary, mind-bending humility. He humbled himself. How far did he go? How far did he go? He chose to put yourself above himself. And how far did he take that? Look at this. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. All he wants you to do is apologize. All he wants you to do is write a letter. All he wants you to do is just shut up. All he wants you to do is say, yes, honey. All he wants you to do is walk up to your son and say, son, I am so proud of you. All he wants you to do is walk up to your daughter and say, honey, I love you. How far did he go? To death, even death, not just any death, even death on a cross. And then he looks at you and he looks at me and says, now here's what I want you to do. Follow me, follow me, follow me, follow me. It's just so emotional, isn't it? Isn't that weird? We know this. It's like I haven't said anything you haven't thought of or heard before, maybe just in a different way, but it's just so emotional. That's why pride controls you. It controls you through your emotions, not necessarily through your intellect. Your emotions tell your brain. Your emotions send your brain a message, and the message goes like this. Your emotions say, hey, brain, go find a reason for not apologizing, because it doesn't feel good. So then your brain goes, I would. But she said, I'm afraid that maybe, and it would get complicated. Your emotions are going, thanks, brain. Because that was not going to feel good. I needed a reason to substantiate these bad feelings. It didn't feel good. So Jesus says, hand me the remote. Come on. Hand me the remote. Do you really want pride to control you the rest of your life? Do you want pride to continue to drive what's happening in your marriage or in your relationships? Pride is not your master. It doesn't have to be your master. Hand me the remote. I want you to embrace radical humility. And if you're a Christian, we have no excuse not to. Every time you sing these songs, every time you pray, every time you say thank you, Jesus, every time you say, God, help me, you're assuming a relationship with God that is based on extraordinary humility, to which we have been invited to participate. So we're going to end today with 3 questions to kind of get you thinking, then we'll send you out of here and come back next week. So question number 1 is this, just to get us all thinking, okay, here we go. Question number 1 is this. How does pride manifest itself in you? Now, if you don't know the answer to this question, someone very close to you does. Okay? This is a mystery, like, I don't know. I don't even know if I have this problem. Over lunch, toward the end of lunch, I would suggest, so you don't ruin the whole lunch, you should say, hey, you know what, I think I've got this and that, but hey, honey, son, daughter, friend, roommate, fiance, whoever it is, I don't know it's weird. You're not actually going to do this. These are things preachers say because we don't know what else to say. You're not going to do it. But while we're on it, you say, hey, how do you think my pride manifests itself? And if everybody gets real quiet and they make eye contact with each other and not you, I'll tell you how it manifests itself in me. A long time ago, I really did not care, or at least I didn't think I cared what people thought about me. In fact, that was a pride thing, So now a lot of people know me. So now I am so ridiculous about trying to protect my reputation that I am constantly tempted to lie and exaggerate. Now, should I protect my reputation? Yes, you should protect yours too. But you know what pride does? Every once in a while, somebody asks a question. Once in a while, somebody says something that's not exactly right, or somebody compares to, or somebody says something, and I feel my pride well up, and I'm going to correct them and make sure they know, and make sure I correct, and make sure they say, or I might exaggerate a little bit, or I might just flat out lie because I want to protect my reputation. There's that pride. The other thing, too, is I get older, and all of you will experience this at some point. You start to feel entitled to things. I mean, we all feel that already. Like, well, I've worked hard, and I deserve that, and they owe me that, and I ought to, and I ought to take advantage of that. Nobody will know, but nobody should care. And if they ask me, I'll just tell them. It's just, wells up inside of me. And I'm thinking, that is ugly. And it has the potential to undermine everything that I want to see God do in and through me as a pastor and as a father and as a parent, as a parent, as a husband. It's just ugly. It's one reason I don't want to have a reserved parking spot at any of our churches, and I don't want my name to be on any of the signs. It's like, such and such church, pastor so-and-so and so. I'm like, I think for pastors, those are the first 2 lines of entitlement, and I just think, I don't want to do that. And you say, Andy, you're so humble. No, I'm scared to death of my pride. It's big and bad and ugly and powerful. And at some point along the way in your life, you got to answer this question. How does it have the potential to manifest itself? And you got to call it out. You got to call it out so it doesn't shut you in. You got to call it out so it doesn't shut other people out. So in your world, how does this manifest itself? Here's the second question. This is a harder one. What does pride masquerade as in you? Now, this is a tough one. What does pride masquerade as in you? Confidence? Well, I'm just confident. No, you're arrogant. And it's okay to be confident, but is confidence how you masquerade and how you camouflage pride? Intellect? Fashion? fashion. I just like the nicer things. I just like the better things in life. I just have good taste. Yeah, it's true, and all of that's fine. But is that how you mask and hide your pride? Sarcasm? A commitment to excellence? I mean, there are all kind of wonderful things. There are all kind of virtues behind which pride hides. And I'm telling you, when you spot it and you call it out, you're making progress. Last one is this. How much longer? This is sort of rhetorical, but it's something to think about. How much longer do you plan to let pride hold the remote? A month? A year? The rest of your life? Wouldn't you like to break it? Wouldn't you like to kill it? Wouldn't you like to walk away from it? Wouldn't you like to recognize it and keep it front and center so every time it whispers, you go, no, not you, pride. Pride, you are not my master. You are not my warden. You are not my boss, and you are not my boyfriend, okay? Pride, I am absolutely done with you. I'm breaking up, and I'm walking away. Watch this, pride. Watch this, pride. I'm going to go over there and apologize, right? Apologize. And what happens? Kapow! Got you, pride, right? Pride, watch this. I'm going to go over there and compliment them on what a good job they did. And even though they got the job that I wanted to get and everybody thinks I'm jealous and all messed up, watch this, pride. I'm going to go over there and compliment them on what a good job they did because you do not hold the remote control. And you know what else I'm going to do, pride? I'm going to pray. And if you don't watch it, I'm going to start praying out loud. Because you are not going to control my life. Pride, I'll tell you what else I'm going to do. I'm going to admit I have a drinking problem. I'm going to admit I have an addiction. I'm going to tell somebody because pride for years and years and years, you've been whispering, you can handle it, you can handle it, you can handle it, you can handle it. If they know. But you know what, pride, I'm tired, I'm done. Because I'm not getting any better and you're not helping me get any better. You're helping me get worse. I'm not going to hide behind my pride. It's no longer going to keep me in and keep God and others out. I am moving on. And here's the question, then I'm done. Why not? Why not? Why would you continue to embrace and follow something that has the potential to kill you instead of following someone who died for you? Why would you continue to hand the remote to something that has the potential to kill everything that's valuable to you instead of choosing to surrender your life to someone who chose to die for you? Why not, even if you're not sure about who Jesus is, why would you not embrace his radical approach to humility? Because it has the power to do what we sing about at all of our churches all over the country, the power to set you free. And you will no longer be shut in, and God and others will no longer be shut out. Hey, thank you so much for joining us at Your Move. Did you know if you go to the website at the bottom of your screen, you can download our free app where you can see all of our Your Move content for free forever. And the app is the easiest way to share this content with a friend. As always, we're so glad you joined us. We'll see you right back here next week for part 2 of Killing It.
Also, our website is a great place to watch, download, and share the message you saw today from our series, Killing It. Be sure to tune in next week to watch Your Move with Andy Stanley. The preceding program is brought to you by Your Move with Andy Stanley.